once and for all for the travel industry. So welcome on stage, Cynthia Huang.
Everywhere with me. So I'm very excited to talk about Web3's potential for the travel industry today. And to give you a quick overview of what I'll be covering, I'll be talking about the connected trip, personalization, and then why we haven't seen that come to the travel industry yet. I'll attempt to give a masterclass on Web3 and AI on some concepts that are relevant for personalization, and then I'll talk about why these two together are the perfect marriage for personalization, and why we as industry players really need to think about delivering on personalization. And then I'll end with something really exciting, which is a demo of a product that we've been working on at Dtravel, which shows personalization in the vacation rental industry. So I want to start with this definition of the connected trip because I think it captures it really nicely. The concept of a connected trip refers to the seamless integration of all aspects of travel, from the initial planning stages to the final return home. The idea behind the connected trip is to create an end-to-end experience that is both efficient and enjoyable for travelers, while also leveraging the latest technological advancements to provide personalized, context-aware services. So I want you to keep some of these concepts in mind as we go through this presentation. So we know what the connected trip is, and what does this actually look like for travel? We've been promised this idea that when we land on a site, it's going to know that when we book the flight, that I only like to sit in the window seat, and that I never check a bag for something that's shorter than 6 hours. When I travel for work, I only stay at hotels, and when I'm traveling for leisure, I stay at vacation rentals. I only like to eat at places that are very local and within 30 minutes walk from where I'm staying. I love watching shows, but only if I can get a 15% discount. I only take ride shares everywhere, and at the end of my trip, I want an album that I can share with friends and family. And this sounds incredible, right? We've been talking about this for a really long time. It's what we all want as travelers. So why haven't we been able to have this happen in the travel industry? Part of the reason is that travel companies think of the connected trip basically as their connected trip. So they want to provide the end-to-end experience within their own platforms and ecosystems. But this is not how travelers, or we as travelers, travel. We have many, many touch points across the travel journey. So we use a lot of services because that's what's best for us as travelers. And this disconnect between what travel companies want and what travelers' realities are when they're booking trips is why we haven't been able to deliver on personalization. And the other problem is that there's been limitations on the technology side. And this is really where Web3 and AI come in. So I'll attempt to talk about Web3 really, really quickly and about blockchain because this is relevant to the concept of personalization. And I need to start with explaining how Web 2 works. So in Web 2, we have databases, and every company has their own database. Each database is locked, meaning that you need permission to access this database. And even if you do get permission, often you're not getting all of the data. The other problem with databases is that there's no data standard. So the data within one database is often different from how the data is stored in another database. And that means it's very difficult to build across databases. In comparison with Web3, we also have databases, but these databases are what's called distributed and decentralized, meaning that instead of one company storing all the data in one database, it's stored across many, many databases all around the world. And it's also open and permissionless, meaning that anyone can build using that data if they want to. And the most important thing is that when you're building on a blockchain, you're using the same data standard, which means that all that data is compatible and you can easily build with that data. So you can build lots of different applications on top very easily. The most important thing to remember for this presentation about blockchains is that blockchains are really good at storing a lot of data that is interoperable. So let's talk about AI. Basically, we used to have this concept of narrow AI. So it was very limited. You probably had the misfortune of dealing with a chatbot. That was narrow AI. And what we're trying to move towards is artificial general intelligence, or AGI, which is the ability for AI to be able to learn like a human being. So we have Gen AI right now, but we have to train those AIs. What we're trying to move towards is the ability for it to learn, even if it's never been trained on a problem before. We're still a bit far away from that, but Gen AI is sort of in the middle. And it's important to think about this spectrum, because when we just had narrow AI, without the ability for AI to learn, we didn't have the ability to actually deliver on personalization. And so the technology piece is something right now that is able to deliver on personalization. So I want to talk about some AI techniques that are relevant for this topic. This is not an exhaustive list, but these ones I feel are really relevant. So we have machine learning, deep learning, and neural networks. And this is basically the ability for an AI to be able to learn like a human brain does. Natural language processing, or NLP, which is the ability for us to converse with AI in human readable language and for them to converse back with us. Computer vision, which is the ability for AI to be able to look at images and photos and be able to recognize patterns and make inferences from it. And then finally, sentiment analysis, which is the ability for them to look at text and be able to infer meaning and sentiment from it, so positive, negative, neutral, etc. So the most important thing to remember for this presentation as it relates to AI is that AI is really good at analyzing a lot of data and then learning from it. So when we have blockchains and AI, that's where we can deliver on true travel personalization. And I want to show you how this works with an example. So going back to this concept of blockchains, imagine if all these travel companies within the industry built on a blockchain. That means that all the data that they have is interoperable across all companies. And so if me as a traveler, I've interacted with all of these travel companies, my data is stored across all of these companies, I can choose to take that data and then plug it into an AI. And then what the AI is going to do is take all of the techniques that we talked about that it's really, really good at, ingest that data, learn from it, and be able to make recommendations. So it can look at all of my travel history and think, okay, well, Cynthia really likes to travel this way when she's traveling for work versus travel this way for personal. She has these kind of preferences. It's going to be able to look at images from trips I've taken and know that I love hiking because I'm always taking hiking photos, or I love dessert because I'm always taking photos of desserts. So it's going to be able to make these inferences from this data that I've shared. And it's also even going to be able to look at reviews and understand things that I constantly talk about. So I'm a clean freak. If I go somewhere, it has to be very clean. So it's going to start to know these things. I don't even have to tell it, but based on all the information that I've given it, it can start to make these really, really unique personalization recommendations. And so this is where using the data stored on a blockchain along with AI, we can really deliver on this vision of personalization that we've been talking about for such a long time. And I think as travel companies, you might be thinking, okay, well, this sounds great for the traveler, like for me as a traveler, sign me up. But as a travel company, it seems like it's gonna be a lot of work. What's the payoff for me? And this is where the data piece comes in. So today, the traveler journey is that the traveler lands on a website. They share first-party data, meaning all of the data from them interacting with the website is what we as travel companies get. We take that data, we then push out ads to travelers who have interacted with us and travelers who look like that and say, hey, you should book with us. And that's kind of working, but obviously it's very expensive. We all know CPAs are very expensive. But in this world of travel personalization that we're moving towards, travelers are actually going to share zero-party data, meaning they're actually going to tell us, hey, here's all my data, you can take it, and then we will give them a very personalized offer that is very unique to them. And because it's so customized to their needs and preferences, then we have much higher conversions. And so instead of us pushing out ads, we're actually going to pull these travelers into us. So it's a pull mechanism instead of a push. And this is not only much more efficient, but it's much, much more cost effective. And so there's a very real commercial opportunity for us if we are actually going to deliver on personalization. And I want to end my presentation with something that I'm very excited to share that we've been working on at Dtravel. This is an AI meta search that we're working on that will deliver only directly bookable listings and starts to put in some of these concepts that we talked about in terms of the blockchain data piece of it and then the AI.
Introducing Sensei, the first AI-powered travel companion that helps you discover vacation rentals that can be booked directly with owners and operators anywhere in the world. Select a profile, input your travel preferences, and Sensei AI will recommend directly bookable listings. Traveling to a new location, Sensei will narrow down the search, providing you with personalized listings that match your unique travel profile. Clicking a listing will bring you to an independently owned vacation rental site where you can complete your booking without paying commission fees. Embrace a truly peer-to-peer experience and discover listings that can be booked in fiat or cryptocurrencies. Learn more at Dtravel.com. Grow direct bookings and access the API today.
So we're going to be working with industry players on developing a data standard for the vacation rental industry. If you're interested in learning more about anything that we're working on with Web3, AI, or these data standards, please reach out. Thank you so much.
Yes, please stay with me for a moment. And now, thank you so much. That was, as I said, did you understand now better what Web3 is? Yes, I see positive faces, so well done. That's what I was thinking would happen. And now let's invite an academic perspective and an investor's perspective, and let's discuss.
The bad guys.
Sorry?
I said the bad guys.
The bad guys. Let's get the bad guys. Let's now double check, right? What is really opportunity for travel? So I invite on stage, please join me, Beat Blaser and Horst Schreidelmeier, and we'll take a seat over here. So thank you very much for joining me on stage. Joining me, and thank you everyone for being here and for joining our session, and also everyone online, thank you for tuning in. And I hope you found that as insightful as I found it, the setting the scene keynote. Thank you so much for sharing and helping us to understand this, very challenging technology. As if you're a layperson, it's very complex, it's very hard to understand. And allow me quickly to just do this professionally and introduce them properly, right? So welcome, thank you for joining. Beat Blaser, he's co-founder and managing partner at Tectus VC and at Frankenstein Ventures. Thank you very much for coming in and joining us.
Thank you.
And then we have the academic perspective, Horst Schreidelmeier. You are doing so many things. So you're professor for international management at the University in Vienna, but you're also research fellow of UCL, Center for Blockchain Technology, and the Digital Euro Association, DEC, and the DLT Education Consortium. And long story short, you're very passionate about Web3 and blockchain.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, wonderful to have you. And well, Cynthia Huang, just for everyone that's just tuning in now, she's the co-founder and CEO at Dtravel, a Web3-based location rental platform, right? Mm-hmm. So, right, it's the obvious first question. What's the first thoughts that come to mind after you heard what Cynthia just shared? Do you really think the combination of AI and Web3 is the innovation junction for our industry? Would you like to start?
Definitely. For me, it's actually three technologies, a group of technologies. It is Web3. You can say blockchain does some kind of differences, but we don't need to go into detail right now. Then, of course, we have the elephant in the room, AI, which is much bigger than just natural language processing. And you've shown it on the slides, actually, but with AI, we could even go back a couple of decades, people analyzing payments, transactions, and credit card companies have been doing this for a long time. And the third technology for me is the Internet of Things, and all those three technologies, they have different functions. So Internet of Things is about collecting data and also sending data to the outside. The blockchain, like you said, is more about storing and putting hashes somewhere. And of course AI is finalizing data. So you need to have all of these three together to come to the fullest potential.
Right, Beat, you're investing in the travel space and you've been in this industry for quite some time. What are you saying? Is that really giving us the innovation we're seeking?
Well, I believe so.
Right.
So there's estimates out there that like 2025, 26, like 85% of the content in the internet will be AI driven or somehow AI. So can you imagine there's a lot of content out there, there's a lot of fake out there, and obviously there's a lot of bullshit out there. And I think you rather have a layer of security where you can trust. So yes, I do believe that AI needs blockchain, and blockchain needs AI infrastructure.
Right, okay, so we agree upon that. That's a common ground. Want to start? So no differences here yet. So let's stick with you for a moment, Bea, because you reviewed a few hundred Web3 startups across the travel, right? So you've seen the good, the bad, probably you learned a lot. What can you share? What's the main learnings you had, especially maybe in comparison to Web2 space and startups?
Yes, so we are investing in startups. We see more than 3,000 startups, travel technology worldwide. Less than 300 from the Web3 space. And yes, it is so different still. And a couple of observations there. Business models typically are not so straightforward like in Web2. Like in Web2 you can say, okay, it's camping, or it's tour operator, or it's software as a service. And in Web3 you have the likes of earn as you walk models, right? So stuff like Pokemon Go, where you can earn stuff. So business models are typically more complex, number one. Number two, the majority of the founders are from outside of the industry, which is good and bad. So good is that they bring in fresh new ideas, and bad maybe that they are sometimes really detached from what is the reality in travel business. So opportunities for corporates out there. And number three is, which is the fun part, all of the presentations look the same. So they are dark, they are somehow mysterious, and a little bit spooky. And then when it comes to business models, I think 50% can be clustered in three. Number one is we have some 17% marketplaces, right? Like maybe Dtravel, maybe Sleep.io is here as well. We have 17% in our DFRO DeFi, decentralized finance, which is a massive opportunity for this industry. Think of payment processes, settlement processes, and the whole headache which everybody has with reconciliation. So you can bring your cost down massively. And number three is tokenized products. So we see a lot of startups coming up with tokenizing either vacation rentals or hotels or tents or even RVs, campers. So everything is going to be tokenized. That's one part. And the other aspect is that bookings are being tokenized. So flight bookings, hotel bookings, and what we can see going forward is that there is a new market emerging where bookings are being traded, even non-refundable rates. So there's a huge chance that you book a rate and you can retrade it again. So these are probably a little bit of the main clusters which we see in the news.
Right, very insightful. So yeah, you learned a lot, I guess, by reviewing all of those models. And Horst, I know you're very passionate about Web3, but in the pre-discussions you said there's a difference, right, to Web2. What do you say? What makes it so special? What do you have to consider when you look at it?
Yeah, Cynthia already gave us an explanation. I would like to come up with this very simple definition. And anyone in the room who is older than maybe 45 or 50 has seen the evolution. Anyone who is younger than, most likely you don't remember Web 1, which was basically about getting information from the internet. So you opened a static website and you could read something, but that was it. And Web 2 was the revolution. You could interact, you could also send some information. And Web 3 was supposed to be the next big giant leap that you could also transfer value. That's something you can do via blockchain. And if you go back 25 years and you look at the HTTP protocol, this was 10 years before Bitcoin. In HTTP you can see an error code 402, payment required. It was never implemented, but in those days people were thinking about sending value over the internet. And with Web3 it was possible, but so many things have happened in between. So we have intermediaries and you can send money via the internet, but you have somebody you can use and you trust them already. So it wasn't a big shift because it was just something that's different, but everything happened behind what you can actually see. So for you as an end consumer, it doesn't really matter if you send money via an intermediary and they charge you 1 to 3%, or you send it directly and transaction fees on blockchain are actually high. So I think that has been kind of overlooked, and that's why the big Web3 revolution has not happened yet. And the second big issue might be that there are already many established incumbents, and they have a position in the market, and they might not be so eager to give up their position. So there might be some reluctance or some kind of resistance. And if we would go back 25 years and reinvent the internet, using the all those startups with their fancy business ideas, complicated, struggle with those companies that are already in place.
Right, okay. So there's a difference, you say. Cynthia, do you agree? Is there such a huge difference? Maybe even in adoption of like new technologies compared to Web3?
Yeah, I wasn't an adult when this Web2 revolution happened, but I think that we often get compared in Web3 with the evolution of the internet. And I've been talking to a lot of people about this evolution. And what's really interesting is that when the internet first came about, a lot of the same patterns, principles that are happening in Web3 today happened at that time. Like there were a lot of scams. People put up websites that did nothing, raised a ton of money, and then disappeared. And this is one of the biggest complaints about Web3. And yet, if you look at every technology cycle, this is sort of the pattern. And it's almost like, as part of the technology cycle, we almost have to accept these things as a cost of the cycle and change. And so anything that's happening right now in Web3, I don't think is unique to just Web3. Every time we have a really game-changing technology, we're going to see these same shifts happen.
Right, that's a good point, I'd say. What do you think, Ben? You
In terms
agree?
of adoption.
You agreed with this point made, yeah?
Oh yes, I was there, and yes.
I was there. Did you do some money on it?
No, unfortunately,
He's one of the ones who put up the website.
So maybe Horst, tell us, why is there so many projects then, besides those reasons in the Web3 space?
Yeah, first of all, the technology is very complicated. You mentioned business models are complicated, but I would go way below that and say that technology is complicated. And for example, a couple of years ago, in 2016 and 2017, there was this great idea of creating a decentralized autonomous organization, but it failed because of a simple programming mistake, more or less. And it's not that the idea was bad, or those guys didn't know how to program, but the programming paradigm is so different if you're dealing with smart contracts and you need to get it right the first time. So that's one big hurdle. Another big issue is that the technology is on a constant development. So, for example, it might be the case that you hear somebody say, oh, there's quantum computing coming and quantum computing is destroying, I don't know, cryptography or blockchain, but there's no one such thing as the blockchain. There are many different types of blockchains and they are consisting of different parts like Lego, and you can put them together and potentially you can also modify them, and the technology is always evolving. So it might be the case that quantum computing is breaking something that's called ECDSA. It doesn't matter what that is, but it might also be the case that somebody finds a quantum secure cryptography, and it has already been done. And it's really hard to build, I think, business models on something that's constantly changing. That might be an issue, but it can be done. So in other presentations, it also was mentioned that we have these trade-offs. For example, between the scalability, how much throughput can you have, how much security can you have, and how much decentralization can you have. Which means that if you build something on a blockchain, then you have to make some compromises. Either you go for many transactions or you go for the maximum level of security, and those kind of things you also need to consider. So there's not one best way of doing it, but you need to make compromises, which is perfectly fine because, again, it's an evolution.
Right, okay. Makes sense. And then you mentioned this with your take earlier, corporates, there's opportunity for them, but then also we see them being very hesitant, right? And they're struggling with how to approach Web3. Shall we go into it? Shall we just test it? Shall we outsource it? How we approach it? What would you say? Is there maybe an opportunity for the startup world and corporates to work together and learn from each other?
yeah, it's all. You need to spend some time to understand blockchain technology in Web3, and I think it's a lot about self-education, podcasts, YouTube, talking to people. And in a lot of cases, people in corporates don't have the time,
Right.
don't want to spend the time. So, and they're not aware that there's really killer applications out there. And I think, like I said, so most of the founders we see are coming outside from the industry. And that makes even more sense for them to pair up and combine and help each other because these two entities need each other. And a good way to do that is really engaging with startups like with Cynthia, or investing in startups like what we do, or partnering with the likes of Plug and Play, or doing hackathons, etc. So take some time, just experiment a little bit, make your steps.
Okay, Cynthia, what's your take on that? What do you see? Is there an opportunity, or do you don't need the corporates at all? Maybe you can just redefine everything yourselves.
I think it really depends on the sector for sure. I
Right.
mean, there's some sectors like travel where I think obviously incumbents play a massive role, and I think it would be silly of us as startups to say that we don't need them. Obviously, we partner, especially for us, like we're trying to build out the NEG protocol, which is a standardized data protocol for listing and booking data and vacation rentals, and we need adoption from big players, small players, everybody. So it's very important that we work with them. I think one thing that often is misunderstood though about Web3 is it feels like it's all or nothing. So you have to, go all in, you have to adopt all the technology, and that's not the reality, right? Web3 is sort of divided into two things. It's about the cultural or societal aspect of it, and then there's the technology which is enabling it. But really what's driving Web3 and adoption and awareness is that people want what Web3 promises, which is for you to own your data, for you to get access to different products and services, and to be able to financially benefit from that if you contribute growth. And those things are not unimportant when trying to understand Web3 and adoption. And the same thing with AI. Like, AI is a technology, but why is it so important? It's because it enables things that wasn't possible before. It saves people time. And so understanding these cultural and societal nuances that's driving technological change is very, very important to understand how you adopt the technology, because if you understand that, then how you decide to implement it into your business really fundamentally changes, because you're meeting people where they're at. You're not just trying to take something on that feels false or inauthentic, but it's really authentic to your mission, what you're trying to do in your company.
I think that's a good advice. And Horst, from your perspective as an academic, you see both sides, right? I mean, you meet startups, you meet the corporates, they invite you as well, like to help them understand certain areas. What would you say? Do you see a potential there for them to work together?
I'm kind of independent or agnostic in this matter, but I can see what I've seen in the years before, the different options. First of all, corporates can buy startups. And I've especially seen this during blockchain winter, because the talent usually goes where the money is. So if there was a lot of cash flow coming in during ICO time, it was easier for startup to get funding. And in blockchain winter, corporates were integrating some of them. Or of course you can outsource it if you're not that big. If you just want to buy a specific service, for example, for a university, we could use a blockchain-based company for the verification of certificates. And so there is a startup that is working with us on that subject matter. The third option would be just to find the talent, and for example with hackathons, it's very popular, and then you figure out who the best students are, and then you learn about their ideas, and then maybe you are hiring them and you get some new inspiration. Those are the options how it could work. But right now I see many interesting startups coming up, and I think the benefit from working together with the corporate world, and also the other way around.
Right, okay. I mean, it's way too little time because we could continue, right? I would love to dive into use cases and see how it's really applied, but unfortunately, we only have today, and you won't stay for a week, unfortunately. I would, you wouldn't, so not my fault. But we have one last question that I think is maybe giving the most value to the audience. I think it's always valuable to have like a key takeaway, right? Like advice you can take out of the session. So if you would summarize this, like what's your, like for this complex topic, one last note or key message that you want to share for anyone that wants to maybe start with Web3, doesn't understand it right, how to approach this? Is there an advice you can share, Cynthia?
I think that data is increasingly going to be very important in this world of GDPR, et cetera. And I think Web3 accelerated with AI really is going to make that shift happen much sooner rather than later. And in Web3, we have this concept of collaboration over competition. That's really one of the key ethos of Web3 and why I personally really feel very passionate about Web3. And I think that's something that we need to adopt in travel. Like, what brought us to this place is not going to take us to the future. I know ITV, the the slogan is like pioneering the future together.
Yes.
Exactly, and I think that is really one of the key messages we as an industry have to do, because there's a lot of new companies coming in from outside of travel, and if we don't work together as an industry in travel to compete and to move into the future, then they're gonna eat our lunch. And so connectivity is one of the biggest things that's holding back this industry, whether it's vacation rentals, hotels, airlines, and that's something that we need to address ASAP. So my takeaway is, if you want to work on data standards, please reach out to us. We would love to collaborate, because again, I think we really need to work together to move this industry forward.
It's a beautiful statement. Thank you for that advice. Morris, what would you say? What's your key advice?
My advice would be, maybe you know the saying, the early bird catches the worm, but the second mouse gets the cheese. If you have not heard about it, think about it for a second. And it doesn't mean you have to be the first mover in all occasions. Then it doesn't make any sense to jump in every bandwagon that's out there. But I would advise everybody working in the space to have an eye open for what's going on, to analyze all the technologies and to see if they can potentially change their business models, or even could be detrimental to the business models, just to see what's going on and to take the necessary measures in time. That would be the most important thing to stay competitive.
Right, okay. And Beat, you have the last word basically. What's your advice? Is there something you can add? You say that's what we would like you to do.
Yeah, I think study Bitcoin. Then you will learn about the power of this technology and learn so much more about, you know, what this blockchain technology can do. And on top, you get a little bit of macroeconomics update by doing that.
Right, okay. And then to close this off for everyone to educate themselves, what's your favorite source that you turn to stay up to date around Web3?
Oh,
Can you recommend one? Did you
Yes.
have a favorite one? Now you're on the spot. Right?
Yeah.
But you know plenty.
There's a podcast called Bankless Podcast, and they dive into very technical topics. So might be a little bit overwhelming for someone new to Web3, but I think it's very comprehensive. And the hosts of that podcast are extremely, extremely intelligent and try to keep pretty neutral. So I think that's a really great resource for somebody who wants to dive a little bit deeper, especially into the technical aspects of it.
Right. Morris, do you have a favorite source? Or?
Not one favorite source. I have many of them, but I would second Beat saying, if you want to learn more about the technology, study Bitcoin. And even if, let's say, the president of NVIDIA says we don't need programmers anymore because we have AI, I would advise everybody to get a little bit into technology, to have a look at programming, because the time you spend on understanding what's going behind the scenes and how those things work, that's time well spent. So not one particular source, you find tons of excellent stuff out there.
Right, and Beat, again, now the really last hour.
Very cool. So I do have a lot of sources, but I think one of the sources is also here, which is Luca from Web3 in Travel podcast, which I think...
I like that a lot, because also as a layperson you can...
Yeah, which I think it is
understand.
like, he explains stuff like, you should explain it to my mother, so my mother understands, and I think that's a brilliant skill. So if you want to delve into the matter, I think it's worth spending some time.
Well, what can I say? We're almost out of time. I really enjoyed this. I think everyone feels the same, because everyone is looking at us, not at their emails. I appreciate that a lot. I saw it throughout the session. So thank you so much for being here with me, Cynthia Huang from Dtravel and Horst Treibermeier from the University of Vienna, and Beat Glaser, Tech2 VC and Falkensteiner Ventures. I hope to see you again next year here on stage. Thank you so much again for being here with us. Thank you very much. And back to you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Julia, and thanks to your guests, and of course these insights of new media that we should follow. We all noted down some new podcasts.